we have a new WarFrame. His name is Lavos. He is the Alchemist WarFrame with the ability to access every single elemental damage type in the game. That's right, folks. We got ourselves the Avatar. So, well, let's just have a look at him. Here we are in the simulacrum with Lavos. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to now unpause these level 100 corrupted heavy gunners, and I'm going to do a bunch of things first. It's really difficult to really explain what I'm doing at the same time because he's pretty complex. But these stragglers should be dead right about now. Awesome. Now you may be thinking, okay, that's level 100 content. What about level 155 content? Well, let's have a look. Here are our level 155 corrupted heavy gunners, so mostly the same idea. And that should kill them as well. Stragglers be damned. Great. Awesome. Of course, this also works really, really well against enemies who aren't armored, i.e. enemies with shields. So, against the Malcolm Heckets, we're going to approach this slightly differently. There we go. Fantastic. So, how does Lavos work? Well, he's actually really, really complicated, and that's actually something that I really like about him. So, his first ability is essentially a heal. That's really what it's good for. His second ability is a slide, but it also can do quite a lot of damage, especially if enemies are standing around this particular circular area, or if anyone is standing where basically these shards are. This actually can deal quite a lot of damage, and because it is innately doing cold damage as well, what it happens is that enemies who actually get hit by it tend to be cold, and therefore they're slow, which means they can do quite a lot of damage. His third ability is something that can also be paused in the middle if you want. That's entirely up to you if you want to do that, but essentially it is a giant electric proc, so that is really, really good for crowd control. And then his fourth ability is probably his most highest damage ability, so between his 2 and his 4 he does have 2 pretty decent damage abilities, but this one does have a pretty large cooldown. Essentially it's just a giant heat proc, but it does do quite a lot of damage. The big thing about Lavos is the idea of infusing his abilities with other elements. So you could potentially infuse his abilities with single elements if you want, but there was also another cute thing that Lavos could do, which is to combine his abilities with combined elementals. So originally I thought you had to press 1 and then you had to hold 2 in order to do that, and that way you could actually do something like this where suddenly you're not just doing cold damage, you're also doing viral damage. But it turns out that if you actually press the 2 buttons at the same time, you can actually hold them together, and in doing so you effectively now have the ability to infuse a combined elemental without having to wait for 2 buttons. So that is actually really, really strong. That's why you may have noticed at those demonstrations that I actually combined a lot of those elementals together immediately as part of my damage cycle. So once again, against the corrupted heavy gunners, I'm going to now do viral, corrosive, gas for no reason, and it's essentially the same idea. Basically the idea is that it is what it is, and it just works really, really well regardless. And of course this straggler is taking a little bit of time, but that's okay. You can always use a melee weapon that has conditioned overload to do quite a lot of extra damage. So what is the build that I'm using for Lavos? Let's have a look. Here is the build that I am using for Lavos, a really straightforward tank build that has all of the good stuff. So keep in mind that there is this random energy stat in my UI for some reason. I think it's just a UI bug, so just completely ignore it. So the idea is we have tankiness in the form of vitality, and adaptation is really, really good for a Warframe that can heal himself really quickly with his first ability. We also have extra duration on our abilities, quite a lot of duration, mind you. We also have extra range, quite a decent amount of range on our abilities, and we also have extra power strength, quite a lot of power strength for this build. You may be thinking, okay, what about your efficiency stat? Surely that is something that is important. I personally don't think that the Transmutation Probe's cooldown reduction is all that worth something to mod for. Honestly, the 30-second cooldown for your 4th ability doesn't actually seem to be terribly long. If it could be lowered by just a tiny bit, sure, but otherwise I'm not really complaining. For the most part, especially in normal missions, I'm actually relying a lot more on my second ability to be the damage dealer to destroy a lot of those easy mode enemies. And even in Steel Path, because we're not constantly dealing with things like corrupted heavy gunners, generally speaking, the second ability is actually perfectly fine for doing a lot of damage. As a direct result, I'm actually relying on an ability that has a 5-second cooldown as opposed to an ability that has a 30-second cooldown for the most part. So honestly, not really complaining on the cooldown side of it, so therefore I'm not really putting a whole lot of emphasis on the efficiency of this Warframe. If you really wanted to put some efficiency onto this Warframe though, it is entirely possible with this build because it is pretty malleable. You could probably do something like this. You could probably remove one of the augers and just put in something like good old-fashioned streamline, and you know, there we go. Suddenly it can work a little bit like this. So let's just have a look at what the build looks like when you have a bit more efficiency against those level 155 corrupted heavy gunners. At that point, you'll probably want to use your second ability and then your fourth ability immediately, and then do something like that. As you can see, the cooldown has been brought down from 30 seconds to about 13 seconds, so that's pretty good. But honestly, I just feel like because of Lavos' third ability having such a high cooldown to begin with, around 8 seconds, it doesn't really seem to have much value on the cooldown reduction side at least. So, I don't know, personally, I don't think it's all that necessary to be using that cooldown reduction, or at least put that much emphasis on it. And that's pretty much it. Really straightforward build for a really complex Warframe, actually. I used to think that Harrow was going to be one of the most complex Warframes in the game, but yeah, Lavos is way more difficult to understand. Definitely requires a lot of practice, and you need to figure out like what abilities you want to use with what elements in particular. I like to use Radiation with Lavos' third ability, mainly because Lavos' third ability is an ability where you just throw something out in a straight line that affects everyone with the certain statuses that it is already imbued with. So if you imbue it with Radiation, what you can then do is have all of their enemies trying to basically hit themselves, which is really good because what that means is you get to be even more survivable in a normal mission. Ultimately though, it's entirely up to you how you want to do it. Just keep in mind that if you end up using something like Magnetic by accident against Grenier, that's on you, but generally speaking, you should be okay with pretty much all of those abilities. It's really strong. Also keep an eye on your health as well, because that heal is really damn strong, so just when you start losing health, that's when you could probably want to use your first ability. Otherwise, your first ability pretty much just sits there ready and waiting on standby, so that's pretty much it. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this. Let me know what you think about Lavos in the comments. I think the community seems to be taking Lavos in pretty well, at least as far as I can tell, because obviously from what we've seen, he's a really bloody strong Warframe. He just needs someone to get used to his general gameplay loop, and once you figure that out, I think you're going to be really good with practically almost everything. It'll be interesting to see if he's actually useful in Eidolon hunts. We'll just have to see, but that radiation damage, or at least the radiation potential, could be something that's useful. We'll just have to see. Otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed this. If you like this video, hit that like button, subscribe for more Warframe content, and until next time, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching. Bye.